Hello, I'm David Hawks with Agile Velocity, and what I'd like to share with you today is a framework that we developed called Path to Agility to help you kind of navigate your Agile transformation. The first premise is that whenever we introduce change, we get worse before we get better. This is a natural reaction. We start with what we call status quo, and then we enter a phase of what we call chaos and resistance. And this is a natural reaction because the rules just change, right? We introduce the change, and then all of a sudden people freak out because they don't know how to play by the new rules, and they're trying to figure out how to be as good as they were before under this new structure, these new processes, these new practices. And eventually we kind of bottom out at this point where like we understand there's new rules, but we still suck at these rules. But now that we understand them, we can start integrating and practicing these rules. We can start getting better, and eventually we're going to get to this new status quo up here at the top. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're going through, we need to recognize as leaders that we're introducing our folks to these changes as we are adopting Agile. And we need to support our people as they go through it. So what we've done is we've taken this kind of change curve and thought about, okay, what patterns have emerged for us as we've introduced change throughout organizations, and what are kind of the stages of somewhat agile maturity that we see organizations go through. So the first thing we want to make sure is that organizations are aligned around the purpose of the agile transformation or transition or adoption. And we see this all too often that people say the reason why we're going, doing this is to be more agile. Well, that's a terrible objective, right? Because it's a solution, it's not an outcome. So we want to really focus on what's the outcome so that we can get everybody motivated. If we're about to ask everybody to go through this pain, well, we better get everybody motivated around this mission or this goal of what we're trying to achieve. So we need to have alignment around that. The next thing that we want to focus on is, are we, is what we call learn. So are we actually getting better? Are we creating a culture of improvement? Do we have the teams armed with the knowledge? We're talking about self-organizing teams. So do they have the knowledge in order to own their processes and their improvement? Are we getting the leaders educated around what they need to do? Are the leaders creating a culture that is around safe to fail, so that the teams can get better? Are we leading the initiative or this change in a way where we're removing impediments quickly? So are we creating visibility around the work so that we can start identifying where the bottlenecks are? So we need this culture of learning, this culture of improvement, so that we can start getting better. And when we start getting better, we start looking at this next stage, which is what we call predict. So we want to get a predictable cadence of delivery. So we're not saying that we are predictable in a way where we could know exactly what we'll deliver 6 months from now. But what we want to do is create a culture or a practice of every couple weeks we know that we can get about 10 things done, or whatever that number might be, that we have a predictable velocity. And that's where teams are getting truly done every sprint. They're swarming together. They're good at breaking work down. The organization is creating focus by limiting whip and by creating more of a pull versus push structure, right? So is leadership supporting by making a practice of creating focus for the teams, and are the teams working where they're taking shared ownership to get things done and predictable delivery every sprint. Now we put predict before our next stage, which is accelerate, and the idea is that we've got to get predictable before we can start going faster, because we can't tune something we can't measure, right? So if we're not very predictable and we say go faster, we're just going to be all over the place. So the idea is that the first thing we need to do is get a predictable cadence, and then once we have that cadence, then we can start tuning the engine. So accelerate starts looking at things like, are we optimizing the whole value stream? Are we releasing continuously? Are we doing DevOps practices? So are we actually pushing code into production faster, in smaller chunks? Are we getting a faster time to value, and those kinds of things? And then the last stage is what we call adapt. And so this is about, are we creating a culture where we're learning not only in terms of our process that we were doing earlier, but learning from a product perspective. Are we building the right product, right? The scary stat is 64% of the features we build are rarely or never used. So are we actually starting to create more build, measure, learn loops and focusing on adapting based on what the market is telling us with objective data, which starts changing how the business makes decisions? So it starts impacting things like marketing and finance, senior leadership, and how we're doing strategic planning. So all of that starts creating what we call organizational agility, or an adaptable organization. And that's this stage. But we can't get to adapt if we can't deliver quickly. And we can't deliver quickly if we can't deliver in a predictable way. And we're never going to get there if we haven't created this learning culture. And we're not going to get everybody to embark on this mission if we're not aligned around the purpose. So that's what we see as far as Path to Agility. And what Agile Velocity does for organizations is, what we really focus on is accelerating people through this learning cycle and reducing the risk of change, that we don't go too deep in that change. So if you'd like some help on how to get through this path to agility quicker, or to reduce the risk in your endeavor, then please give us a call. I'd love to chat and find out more about what you guys are doing. Thanks.